question 1, I'm looking for Leslie Coombe. Hello Leslie, good to see you. We're going to bring a mic to you, but if you're happy to ask your question, we'll start there.
It works, okay. So it's quite long because you've chosen to put 2 of my questions into one, and therefore my wording has been slightly changed from what might be in front of you, but it covers the same stuff. I've just made it a bit more logical. So I'm concerned about the LDP and the need to build in Felixstowe. So regarding the local development plan that was adopted in September 2020, I read the inspector's report. It seemed satisfied that because of the COVID restrictions, the consultation was extended to 10 weeks. But I've not spoken to one person who recalls any consultation taking place at that time when no public gatherings were being allowed. We weren't mixing with family and friends, so we didn't chat to people. We were living in bubbles. So I would actually argue that the public were not properly consulted right at the very beginning. So I'd like to know how the 10-week consultation was carried out, and I'd like to see copies of how this was notified to residents, setting out the plan and asking for our responses. I'd like to know how many responses were received and can we have access to those in an anonymised format. So it makes me think that the LGP has been based on flawed data right from the start, and also a determination to impose something on Felixstowe which, if it had been consulted adequately, would never have been accepted by us. So I'm asking, is the LDP actually even legally binding? And it has to be reviewed at least every 5 years to ensure it stays relevant and up to date. So can we ask for an early review, so earlier than September next year, and for everything to be put on hold until such time as that review has happened? And then my other part is regarding the election need for more homes. We've seen no evidence that Felixstowe needs a further 1,440 homes, especially in view of conflict with the London Gateway, automation at the port and falling birth rates. So how can we access this data that is going to convince us that we need these homes? And I don't question that Felixstowe needs additional social or properly affordable housing, but even Angela Rayner says it needs to be in the right place. And how many are actually required? And why do we consider, I was told by one gentleman, why is it considered that £800 per month is affordable by people in need of this social housing that is allegedly going to be provided? So,
okay, thank you very much. Thanks, Leslie. Okay, so I'm going to ask Caroline to kick off with the answer to that. And then we'll ask if other panel members want to speak, okay?
Okay, hopefully you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Closer.
Closer? Is that alright? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to use this rather than the other one because you are getting that noise on the thing. So, as I said before, thank you all for coming and thank you for your questions. Thank you, Leslie. I'm going to start with your question, okay? So, I have got some paperwork in front of me and I could take up a lot of time reading out all the stages of developing a local plan, okay? And then it would give absolutely no time for anybody else. So as Mr. Ballychris said earlier, we will give you this information, we'll give everybody this information. But the key stages in developing a local plan... Sorry, are you alright with the phone? Can you hear if I can carry on talking?
Wow. It's annoying.
Last night at the town council meeting,
Yeah.
but it was my phone.
It was your
Put it in the bin.
Okay, so I'm just going to briefly rattle through this, but the information is here and you will get it, okay? So the key stages in developing the local plan are August to October 2017, local plan issues and option documents were published for public consultation. July to September 2018, the first draft of the local plan was published for public consultation, informed by the evidence base. January to February 2019, the final draft local plan, which was informed by consultation responses and revised evidence base, was published to invite representations in relation to soundness. March 2019, the final draft local plan was submitted for examination by Suffolk Coastal District Council, and the representations received along with the evidence base were considered by the independent planning inspector. The examination, including hearings and a consultation on main modifications, was held over a period of almost 18 months. September 2020, the inspector's report was received, finding the local plan sound, subject to making main modifications. And September 2020, the local plan was adopted by East Suffolk Council. There are other bits here that I could go on about. It's all technical jargon. I want to speak to you personally as a lay person without all this technical jargon, because I just find it more comfortable talking as a human being. Okay, sorry. So in 2017, I was a councillor at Waverley District Council. So you're going to have Suffolk Coastal councillors here that were in post at that time. And a public call for land was started. And councillors across both the areas had many meetings where the areas of land that were allocated for potential development were submitted, were discussed, and an evidence and public consultation was held, okay? So the conclusions drawn from those councillor meetings was that certain areas should be allocated for development. That was what was given to the independent planning inspector, who then did an independent, rigorous examination before adopting the Suffolk Coastal Local Plan 2020. That means that up to 1,440 dwellings will be built in the North Felixstowe Garden neighbourhood. That is in proportion to the housing demand across the whole of East Suffolk and needs to be delivered at this point. I was in a meeting with Local Government Association, had a meeting in conference where Angela Rayner. I actually was one of 3 people that got to ask her a question, and I said she's about to up our housing targets by 87%, and her response was, we are committed to bringing forward 1.5 million homes across the country. That is from the government, okay? We need to take our bit of that 1.5 million. Okay, one of your questions was, can we halt the plan, or can we do the new plan early, okay? If this site does not come forward, and it's a designated site for development, that means that we would not have a valid local plan. That means that developers can put in applications wherever they want across the whole East Suffolk district, including Felixstowe, okay? That means we will have developers coming and saying, we want to build 10 houses there, 20 houses there, 50 houses there, and we would have very little control over that, because the government gives presumption to the developers. We can say, representing our communities, that we don't want it, but then the developers will come back in appeal and usually win. Okay? So if this site does not come forward, for whatever reason, that is a possibility. We are here representing the community. A lot of these people on this bench here live in your community. This is happening across the whole of East Suffolk, but this is about the North Felixstowe Garden neighbourhood. Okay? Regarding developing a local plan earlier than the next one that's coming forward, it does take a long time. As you can see from the dates, we started the last one in August 2017 and it was adopted in September 2020. We are going to start working on the next one, but it's going to take a long time to come forward. And if we stop and say we're not going to do any more development until the next plan comes up, that speculative development will happen.
Thanks, Caroline. Yeah, Paul, you said
yeah, I just want to add a few bits about housing need. So to give you a bit of context, this is UK. There are currently 3.4 million young adults, so this is people over 20, who are living at home with their parents. That is where a significant part of the housing need comes from. And many of those people who may end up living in North Felixstowe Garden neighbourhood are already in Felixstowe. They're living with their parents. Another bit of information in terms of demographic changes. The number of over 85 85-year-olds, 85 and overs in the UK at the moment is 1.4 million. That's forecast to grow to 2.6 million by 2045. And bear in mind, there's quite a lengthy build-out process in the North Felixstowe Garden neighbourhood. So we've got an increased continued occupancy of houses as people live for longer. And we've got so we need to bear that in mind. So that's occupying houses longer than they used to be occupied. And we've got an ever increasing demand of younger people who can't buy a house. So it will be somebody, somewhere in Felixstowe, a couple of people, 30, 32, want to get married, really want to have their own place before they can get married, and are currently putting off getting married. It's lots of examples of that sort of thing. In Felixstowe at the moment, the East Suffolk Council has a system called Gateway to Home Choice, and it's the system we use for people to register an interest in social housing. So for us, that's our council housing and then housing provided by housing associations. In Felixstowe, in August, there were over 500 people on Gateway to Home Choice. There's over 200 on bands A to C. The bands below that will be on that housing, on Gateway to Home Choice for years before they get a property. So there is a really significant demand for houses, and it's younger people. It's the people who go to university and come out with 50, 60, 70,000 pounds debts. And let's be brutally frank about it, some of the parents want them to set up their own houses
As soon as possible.
as well. That's where the demand is coming from, and it exists here, it exists right across the country, and it's getting worse. That 3.4 million number used to be 2.4 million about 20 years ago, so it's getting worse and worse.
Yeah.
I got the okay from Mr. Bally, so I think what we should do is...
I was going to say, we've got a couple more panel members who'd like to speak.
Yeah.
I mean, the main point is the demand is not something we have made up. It is real, and it's really pressing. And there are lots of people in this town who want houses.
Okay, and Jenny, do you want to?
Is this fine? Can you hear? Is that good? Yeah. Oh, it's very good. Thank you. I just want to pick up on 2 points. And I think I can't stress this enough. And I've had many conversations with Chris about this, and I know what he knows what I'm about to say. And indeed, we had a conversation with each of the panel members before we started tonight. There is often a lot of confusion that I get when I have conversations with people on the doorstep and representations when they're made through to me about what we can or cannot change, what you can or cannot change in this process. And I think we have to be really clear, this builds on the leader's choice, Caroline's words earlier. If this process stops, the planning applications go forward to planning committee. They can get refused at planning committee, but they will get to go through an appeal. It is far better that in this process and the designs that have come forward, that the council are the lead design, if you like, they are the lead agency taking this forward, this application. That means there are many benefits that come from that. One, and I appreciate many of you in the room feel that you haven't been consulted on the wider plan, but the process of consultation that we're going through now is far more thorough. And I've worked in housing, I've worked in social housing, and I can attest and say the process of engagement that they are doing is thorough and it is meaningful, and they will listen to the feedback. It also means that then they're able to be the master designers, if you like, and they're able to tweak it and make it right, not just for the community here, but the future. As custodians of the future community, they are able to take a longer-term view of what matters. And you don't need me to tell you that it is in our collective best interest to have a council doing that, rather than to have a private developer doing that. And if we all are custodians of our community, and being able to really, I can't stress that enough, that if it's going forward, we need to make sure that we have a stake, we have a say, and we put forward a plan that is viable and is in the right interest for today and in the longer term. So I urge everyone on this panel to keep making that point publicly and to keep making that point of the benefits of doing it in a joined up way, not to have speculative developers coming along. And it's not just about the wider East Suffolk Council area, but it's within the plots of land and the parcel of land that many of you don't want to see built on, that can get built on if this gets withdrawn. So I hope that I made that clear on it. My second point is about housing demand and need. I appreciate the comments, Leslie, from the beginning. When I'm on the doorstep, when I'm talking to people, there is a real housing need for, as we've heard already said, from young adults that are struggling to get on the housing market. The vast majority of you in the room here, if you own your own home, I have no doubt you've owned it for a number of years, certainly pre-2020. House prices have rocketed, skyrocketed, and getting on the housing ladder is increasingly hard, if not impossible, for people aged 30 and increasing.
55, more people applied to join Home Choice because they need a house. We could only house 124 people in that period. We do have a housing crisis. We do need these homes.
So I've got, where was I going next, wasn't it? Mark.
Thank you. I just wanted to put, because your first question you asked was about consultation. And I was at council in 2016, came in, and in 2017 there was a body of people who wanted to object to the plan. And it was led by a very knowledgeable, very inspired gentleman who tried to muster a number of people so they could challenge this document. And he worked very, very hard from 2017. And I went to a meeting at the Leisure Centre, and there were a lot of people there. So I just really want to clarify and put some local part on for yourself, because that hadn't been covered, that people were aware of the plan in Felixstowe. And the gentleman, and I have a great deal of respect for the gentleman, but he became quite disillusioned because he worked very, very hard. But he actually went to some roads and was told, don't scaremonger. And that was a shame for him. So there was a lot of work going on back in 2017, 2018. So people in Felixstowe were aware of this plan and were objecting to it. But I just want to put some local context to that.
That's fine. So Shane's and then we'll go to the audience.
I just wanted to add a Felixstowe perspective on housing as well, because I'd long thought that Felixstowe and this proposed development was disproportionate. It was unfair that Felixstowe was taking more than its fair share, and we're a peninsula, etc., which is undeniably true. But I was actually looking into this issue in relation to CIL, Community Infrastructure Levy, and I was curious just recently as to why Felixstowe had received in the last 10 to 15 years very, very little district CIL money. Bear with me, it's a bit technical, but this is the money that supports infrastructure that goes along with development. But Felixstowe, I thought, my goodness, we've hardly received any in the last 10, 15 years. We're now starting to get some. And then I looked at the amount of housing that had been built in Felixstowe and Trimley since 2001. And then you can kind of see why we might be getting less CIL in that period. Because actually Felixstowe in that period has been building under 100 houses per year between 2001 and 2015, less than 100 per annum between Felixstowe and Trimley. In 2010-11, there were just 10 new houses built in Felixstowe and Trimley. Just 10. The average between 01 and 15 was 39 per annum. And in total, between 2001 and 2023, Felixstowe and Trimley had just under 1,700 new homes built out of 11,205 in Suffolk Coastal. That equates to 15% of the total houses built in Suffolk Coastal. In fact, 12% if you only count Felixstowe. Whereas we have a quarter of the population. So when I looked at this, it did shift my perspective a little bit. Just that I'm all for fairness and justice, as I think a lot of you would know. And I cannot, with hand on heart, say that what is proposed in this plan and the numbers and the needs that have been described put Felixstowe in an unfair position. I just feel that they don't. I did. When I've looked into the figures, I have to say that they're bringing us up to about a fair point now. We can argue about where they are, etc. In terms of the actual numbers, I don't think we're being hard done by them, if you look at the last 25 years.
Okay, Mike, last point for the panel, and then if you put your hands up, I'll try and select a couple of people.
Hello, can you hear me okay? Fine, thank you. I just would like to remind the leader of the council, I was also at the conference she was at, and I remember Angela Rayner stating quite rightly that the nation is facing and has a severe housing crisis. It really is bad, and Felixstowe is actually no exception to that. But what I also heard her say, that they intend to build, or we intend to build, the right houses in the right place.
Yep.
I can't reiterate that. I mean, I think that is just so important. There is a crisis, and we are not exempt from it here. The other thing is the process of which we've been through. We've been speaking about August to October 2017. I remember a memorable meeting in Walton Community Hall, which was in 2007.
Yes.
And I don't believe that that was the start of the process. I also believe that since then there has been several occasions where there's been public consultations, and certainly during the course of the present local plan, I asked the question at the adoption meeting, I think it was, or it might have been a pre-adoption, how many people had actually supported the plan, and was told it was 19. And when I asked how many actually were against the plan, I was told it wouldn't have mattered if there were 2 million, it would not have made any difference. I knew that 900 people had opposed the plan. So people did respond to it. There was a consultation period. I fly no flag for the present administration. I am in opposition. But I believe they sincerely want to consult and want to get the views of the public. What I hope they do is act on them. Thank you.
Again, if anybody has any points they want to raise or something that's come up, then
yes.
Yes.
It might be nice if all residents were notified. I have never been notified of anything going on, and it was just by just looking through a magazine that I happened to see this tonight. I have never known anything about it. And I think when it comes to local planning, you've got a planning act, I want a land trust or something like that. So you look at that. But that's as far as information goes, as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you. There's a couple of other hands. Got that up there. Sorry.
If it is compared to inland settlements, it only makes sense if that was compared to, say, coastal settlements, because as you know, with the coastline, it all comes backwards. So I don't actually know the region that well, but if you were to compare it with other coastal towns, the percentages, that would give a good reflection, not just the whole do you know what I mean? Because it's not an impact on the whole resources. Another point, just before I finish, I will just say this and be transparent. I did a trial shift at the Grove Pharmacy, and I was told that is the 4th busiest pharmacy in the country. Now they have queues outside the door. I don't know what infrastructure will be put in to alleviate the busyness of them, and also 4th busiest in the country already. I don't know.
We have got a question on infrastructure to come, so we'll come back to that point,
okay.
I think. So thank you.
Well, if you could maybe actually address it.
Respond to that.
Yeah.
I think that is a fair point. You could measure it indeed that we're by the sea, and therefore part of that area is the sea. But you could also measure it by population. I didn't go into. I'm just trying to give indicative figures that really, in the last 20 years, the numbers of new houses being built in Felixstowe have, for whatever reason, I don't know what those reasons are exactly. I was not involved in the council at that time, but it's pretty clear that we were not building new houses in Felixstowe in any kind of number, and that the proportions were much lower than elsewhere in our district. And to some extent, that was a pity, because if that had happened, we probably wouldn't be in the sort of playing catch-up position that we appear to be now with this very big development that's coming on all at once.
I would be interested in those figures.
Can we move?
Yeah.
Why don't you catch up with Seamus later and that? We'll just let a couple of other people speak. So, ladies back.
Hello, I've got a 26-year-old son who would really like one of these affordable houses, but on what's being built so far, he hasn't been able to afford any of them.
No, that's the problem.
Hello, thank you very much. It's a really good point. The thing about having the local plan and with the council involved with the North Felixstowe Garden neighbourhood is we can build social housing on East Suffolk Council land. Okay, it's very difficult to ask builders to build social housing. They won't do it. They don't make enough money out of it. But we own a fair amount of this land, yeah, and we can build social housing on this land. David.
If you're working, you can't qualify for social housing, obviously. If you're working and earning 30,000,
Proper council housing.
Yeah.
Can I just on that? The only restriction of applying for social housing is that you don't earn more than 60,000 a year. Anybody can apply for social housing. You go on the Home Choice, Gateway to Home Choice, and that then everybody's need is rated. So those with the most need are at the top of the list. Sadly, because we've got so few houses, that means only the people with the real need, who are literally on the street, can get there. What we're hoping to get to, by building more houses, is to get more social housing. Social housing means when you pay social rent, it's related to what the average earning is and how expensive houses are locally. You will find that that is about 50% of market rent, so it genuinely is affordable. The trouble is that it doesn't pay builders to build at that rate because the rent is half what they would get on the open market. That's why we need to keep pushing for more and more affordable housing, which we can do through a local plan. If we don't follow a local plan, then they won't need to provide that affordable housing. We're not building houses people can afford to live in. That's what upsets me. We're getting too many houses, big houses that people can't afford. So we will provide houses that people afford to live in. The more houses we build, the more houses we can provide, the more we can get people homes that they really deserve.
I would like to come back in 4 years' time and say that my son will still be living with me.
Yeah.
He is trying his hardest, but because he works, which is all up in the air because he works at BT at the moment, he can't get a job anywhere else. How is he meant to get on the housing ladder? If he goes on your list, he's a young male who has got room at home. So there's no point in going on that list, is there?
I'm going to move us on a little bit, so we need to pick up some other points. So,
Can I take a really quick point before we move on, because I think this theme is coming to an end. On your point, I think you should have a separate conversation with me and with the councillors, because that's a specific point around housing need and housing demand. But we can't have it both ways. We can't have no more development and also have an issue with people not being able to access homes. Your son and many other people's children and many other people's grandchildren, when their housing crisis won't be solved by us not building any more homes. So we have to. So my plea here is for all of you to be involved in the design of what's going forward, not just here but in the future for any aspect, and shape it for your community. Make sure that where developments like this, as we'll continue to talk about for the next hour or so, that you play a part in shaping and designing it so it's fit for your community. But you can't have it both ways. You can't not get more affordable housing, and by which I mean housing, and still end the housing crisis.
yeah, we're going to move on.
Because this is what people come to hear. We want to know rightly what's going to happen with the development. We're not going to stop this.
Okay, we're coming on to that. We will come on to that. So, gentlemen here just want to put his hand up and say something, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, it's fairly quick anyway. It's just, I want to know why both governments, what was in now and one previous, said we don't want to build on grade A arable land. We're not sustainable to feed ourselves. We know we want houses, but it's not going to have houses if we can't feed ourselves. And those two fields you're going to build on, Canada, the third best yield on those in the whole of East Anglia. So why, and a medieval site on there, why are you building on them?
It's part of the local plan.
Okay, I'm going to take one more point from the audience here. Yeah, we'll come
I'll answer that, but I think other people need to come in and answer this as well, because that's a national government policy question, but this is a local council plan, and I'm at risk of repeating myself. If this development was approved, is being approved through the process in terms of the plan and the need and the demand, if this development doesn't go forward, the developers that own, the landowners that own this land can put forward a development. So this goes back to the conversation that I've had with Chris and the need for the council to play a role in being the custodians for...
Surely that's a contradiction in what you say, stand up in government and go to the site.
So this is about, what you're seeing here in this plan is about the old plan that's come forward. I've been very clear when I've been to Athwood also, when I've been talking to people, when I've been talking to Chris and when I've been talking to the councillors, that future development that comes forward for Felixstowe and indeed for anywhere in my constituency must be brownfields at first. For so many reasons, not least that brownfield is closer to town centre, that's where the infrastructure is, that's where the jobs are, that's where the transport is, and I'm very vocal on that and I'll continue to be vocal on that for future developments. And I want to see more affordable homes for young people in their 20s and 30s that is accessible to infrastructure, to transport, etc. This development, if it gets kicked out, it will still be going ahead because of the housing need being met within the context of this plan. And we can keep going round in circles talking about it, but if we don't have somebody acting as a custodian in the best interest of Felixstowe for this development, the plans that will get put forward and that will get approved will be far worse than what you've seen outside.
Okay, I'm going to one more point, and then I'm going to let Caroline have the last word, and then we'll move on to the next the next thing.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. My name is Andy Smith. I was a cabinet member at Suffolk Coastal from the year 2000 until 2019. I was responsible for planning for most of that period. The various parts of the top table have elucidated various fragments of the background. I think it would be helpful if I would whistle through that. It was a painful process. We had a local plan, 2001. The next April I sat down with the Director of Planning. We created a plan ready to go April 2004. The government changed the rules, fundamentally. We sat down and processed the same data, again in the new format, 2007. I don't think we have time for that. The point is the need is real, and there was a gap, as Seamus has pointed out. The gap was because of those 2007, 3 years of judicial review, millions of pounds of our money spent at Tibbage. They failed. We were ready to go in 2011, changed the rules again. We were again ready to go, and we then published what was called the core strategy in 2013, and that turned into the local plan in 2020. Along the way, we lost a big case, what we now know as Crawley Fields. It's in the middle of this development, designed in isolation. We lost that application because we wanted that to be as part of the whole, but that was because it was missing. The need is real. The planning process has caused it for no reasons in the background of Suffolk Coast or East Suffolk. But we do need to go on and do it right. That's another issue.
Okay, thank you. And Caroline.
I just wanted
Low on it. Yeah.
I just wanted to say I've got 25 and 28-year-old, and I said this to Angela Rayner 2 weeks ago when we were at the Local Government Association conference. Can we please stop saying affordable housing and start saying housing people can afford, because they are two entirely different things.
Okay.